There was an interesting article from Bleacher Report today, and it trade targets 10 names, 3 names that were projected for the Kansas City Chiefs, all 3 of them wide receivers. This part is not the compelling part, but I'm going to go through the wide receivers for the Chiefs one by one because I think there are interesting things to talk about with each of them. However, the most interesting part about this article is not something that I think was meant to be interesting, and I will get to that after going one by one through these names. But wow, wooey, this is something that really kind of slapped me in the face at the end of this article, because it's something that we've talked about before, but it's been a couple of years. The NFL has been bubbling in a certain direction, and yeah, I forgot all about this argument. So if you like or appreciate this sort of thing, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. I've dropped a video on the Kansas City Chiefs for over 600 consecutive days now, but we are here for an article titled 2024 NFL Trade Block Big Board Entering Week 6 by Christopher Knox on Bleacher Report. The number 10 name on the list is T. Higgins, wide receiver from the Cincinnati Bengals. And the blurb on T. Higgins reads as such: T. Higgins is at the tail end of our list because the Bengals will have a chance to right the proverbial ship in the coming weeks. Cincinnati faces winnable games against the Giants and Browns over the next 2, and though both are on the road and they can get to a manageable 3-4 record before hosting the Eagles in Week 8. That's an interesting point for these Bengals. I was even starting to waver on the proclamation that I think that the Bengals will be a playoff team. But really, guys, if they can get the next 2 and they can maybe win one over the Eagles, who have themselves looked shaky, all of a sudden everything's back on the table. Cincinnati could be back to 500 by the trade deadline, and that's the big date. And if it is, Higgins won't be going anywhere. He looked fully healthy in Sunday's loss to the Baltimore Ravens and finished with 9 catches for 83 yards and 2 touchdowns. If the Bengals continue to blow games, however, Higgins would be a logical trade commodity because he's set to be a free agent in the spring. Higgins is a high-end number 2 receiver who should draw a fair return, even in a market that could be flooded with receiver talent. Logical suitors include the Kansas City Chiefs, who recently placed Rashee Rice on injured reserve, and the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas may have salvaged its season with a much-needed win over the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday night, and it could use a strong complement to CeeDee Lamb on the perimeter. Brandon Cooks was recently placed on injured reserve following a knee procedure. T. Higgins would be a very good get for the Kansas City Chiefs. I do not think that the Bengals would trade T. Higgins to them. It just doesn't make much sense with the current sort of ethos, pathos, and logos over in Cincinnati, and the amount of ire that move would draw from the Bengals fan base unless the Bengals traded him to the Kansas City Chiefs for a first-round pick, which I do not see being the asking price for T. Higgins. Should the Kansas City Chiefs find themselves on the winning end of that trade, I think T. Higgins would be... There are weaknesses in T. Higgins' game, but what you're talking about is, could T. Higgins be a better wide receiver, basically, than Sky Moore? Yes, he could. Could he be a better wide receiver than Justin Watson? Yes, he could. It might even be that were T. Higgins to find himself on the Kansas City Chiefs, he would be the number 1 target ahead of Juju Smith-Schuster, and really sort of logic would tell you that would be the case. The big issue would be, can he come in and learn the playbook? But he seems to be a consummate professional. I do not think that we would have the same problems with him that we would have with. So I made the video yesterday about Davante Adams. And one thing that I didn't put in the video because it just didn't feel appropriate at the time is that I just don't like Davante Adams. And I do think that one of the reasons I don't like Davante Adams is his attitude. And I think that that could prove prohibitive to the Kansas City Chiefs, A, acquiring him, and B, having the patience for him when he showed up. But I don't think that is going to be a problem with someone like T. Higgins. The number 4 name on this list, DeAndre Hopkins, wide receiver, Tennessee Titans, which we have talked about for how long now, DeAndre Hopkins, as a member of the Kansas City Chiefs, but the blurb itself reads as such. The Titans picked up their first win of the season in Week 4. However, it came with backup Mason Rudolph under center instead of starter Will Levis because of a shoulder injury Levis suffered early in the game. There's a chance that Rudolph eventually takes over the starting role for the remainder of the 2024 season. One rival coach told Diana Rossini of The Athletic that it is only a matter of time before that happens. Now, that is a rival coach, not anyone in employ with the Titans. If Tennessee is ready to pull the plug on the Levis experiment, there's little reason to retain Hopkins, who will be a free agent in 2025. The 32-year-old who has 10 catches for 121 yards and a touchdown this season would provide more long-term value to the rebuilding Titans in a trade. The Steelers, who aren't getting quite enough from their passing attack, could be interested in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is 3-2 on the season, but is still averaging just 178 passing yards per game. The Chiefs also need a receiver and could be interested in Hopkins again. ESPN's Jeremy Fowler reported on SportsCenter on Saturday that Kansas City badly wanted to sign Hopkins during the 2023 offseason, but couldn't hash out a deal. Potential suitors, Kansas City and Pittsburgh. There is something in Hopkins' game that seems to draw Brett Veach and the Kansas City Chiefs towards him. Now, if you want to talk about consummate professional, that's exactly what you're getting in DeAndre Hopkins. You're also getting a wide receiver who maybe has issues with separation, but is going to make the catch. That is one of the things that, especially the last couple of seasons, would be very, very compelling for the Kansas City Chiefs, having someone just who's going to make the catch. Would this be a good acquisition for the Kansas City Chiefs? Yes, the asking price is what you have to look at, what you have to wonder about. I don't know, and this is one of the things with this entire discussion. Every week that goes by, the asking price on these players, hypothetically, should go down. You are getting a player for less and less time in the regular season. Not all of these franchises will be looking to utilize the postseason in the same extent that do the Kansas City Chiefs. But DeAndre Hopkins, for a 5th-round pick, do you make that move? Guys, at this point, I think I do. Heading into the season, would I have made that move? No, I don't think I would have. With Hollywood Brown and Rashee Rice on the active roster, I don't think I would make that move. Right now, if the goal is really to get to the Super Bowl for the 3rd consecutive year and win it, then yeah, I think the asking price being a 5th-round pick is not too terribly much. Number 2, wide receiver, Cleveland Browns, Amari Cooper. Though Adams has become the headliner of the 2024 trade season, that being Davante Adams, Browns wideout Amari Cooper might be the better value. Since the start of the season, he's accumulated 1,458 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns, which compares favorably with Adams' numbers the start of last season, with Adams 1,353 yards and 9 touchdowns. And while Adams' base salary will balloon to $35.6 million in 2025, Cooper can be viewed as a cost-efficient short-term rental thanks to the offseason restructuring. Cooper carries a base salary of just $1.2 million this season. The Browns had no plans to move Cooper ahead of their latest loss, according to Cabot, but Sunday's embarrassment should change Cleveland's tune. The Browns can't even play competitive football with Watson under center, and this is shaping up to be a lost season. A strong offer could pry Cooper out of Cleveland since he's set to be a 2025 free agent and probably has no interest in returning to the current mess. Cooper would be an ideal target for the Chiefs as he's been a proven number one wide receiver target at every NFL stop thus far. He'd also make a ton of sense for the Cowboys because of his team-friendly contract. According to Rossini, Dallas was never interested in Adams because of the financial cost. Perhaps the Cowboys will look to reacquire Cooper, who they traded to Cleveland in 2022, now that his price point is manageable. Potential suitors, the Dallas Cowboys, and the Kansas City Chiefs. This is the premier name, in my opinion, because of the talents that he has, because of the value that he has, because the Kansas City Chiefs are cash strapped, and because I think that he is a guy that would be able to come in and do the Rashee Rice stuff in this offense, at least as well as does Rashee Rice. Of course, the asking price is the big sticking point. Here's the thing. I think that Brett Veach and the Kansas City Chiefs are sold on winning the Super Bowl this season. We saw this with some of the moves that they made in the preseason, making smaller trades to acquire players that they thought were going to make the Chiefs better around the edges. Most of those players have ended up not doing a whole lot this season thus far, and one of them, Peyton Hendershot, even on the practice squad. So, when the need arises for a bigger player for the Kansas City Chiefs, a bigger part player for this organization, when that comes up, I do expect the Chiefs to make a move to acquire someone. The best case scenario at this point, in my opinion, when you're talking about asking price, salary, and potential production, is Amari Cooper. Unfortunately, that's going to be true for every franchise. Even if you have the money to spend, Cooper's still a cheap option. So, if he's a cheap option salary-wise, the asking price for him goes up. I don't know exactly what I would be willing to trade for Amari Cooper for the remainder of this season and into the playoffs. Here's what I really take away from this article. There were 10 names that were hot names in the trade market. We talked about 3 of them right here. 2 more of those names were, of course, Davante Adams, who is on every article written about football right now mentions Davante Adams' name. The wide receiver for the Raiders, obviously, but also Robert Woods, the wide receiver for the Houston Texans. Do that math. The hot names on the trade market right now, the top 10 of them, 5 of them are wide receivers. Isn't that interesting? And we're not talking about we're not talking about these players being on the trade block because of their value to the franchise. You think about the ultimate franchise player, the ultimate franchise position, it's quarterback, right? How many teams are clamoring to trade their really good quarterbacks? Not a lot. Maybe it is that wide receivers really aren't that important. We've seen the Kansas City Chiefs win consecutive Super Bowls with what were at the time mentioned among the worst wide receiver cores in the entire NFL. We have at the trade deadline here teams looking for hot sales, teams looking to unload talent, and 5 of the 10 names are wide receivers. Maybe Brett Veach has this one right. Obviously, he missed on Sky Moore. But a lot of teams miss on a lot of wide receivers in the draft. He hasn't taken terribly many shots at the wide receiver position, not when you consider that the Chiefs play 5 wide receivers, 5 wide receivers basically every game, 6 wide receivers often. So yes, he missed on Sky Moore, and that has been a glaring black eye for Brett Veach in the draft process. But he hit on Rashee Rice. It looks like he hit on Xavier Worthy. Maybe that's the strategy. Maybe it really is drafting wide receivers and getting bargain bin guys like Justin Watson, like Juju Smith-Schuster. Maybe that is the effective strategy. It's not going to be as much fun to watch unless you luck into a big hit in the draft. If Xavier Worthy all of a sudden was Tyreek Hill, if Rashee Rice all of a sudden was Amari Cooper, it won't be quite as fun to watch, but maybe that's how you maintain your situation for building up the roster around that position. And everyone who goes hog wild paying wide receivers ends up getting passed in the playoffs, ends up getting passed over talent-wise at other positions on the field. How much good have those wide receivers done the Miami Dolphins? How much good have those wide receivers done the Miami Dolphins in the wake of the Tua Tagovailoa injury? Not terribly much. Maybe Brett Veach has this one right. That's all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting a like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week, and I hope to have you back for the next one.